For now, let's get you back into the courtroom where we are hearing from Dr. Mitchell Weinberg. He's the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner who performed the autopsies.
Do you expect a severe survivable injury by itself?
Again, I'm not a trauma surgeon, so my best answer is maybe with very, very rapid access to trauma surgery type of care. But again, like I'm talking in the parking lot of major medical center or very close. The bleeding from injury to these kinds of structures is fast, it's significant, so at most I'd say maybe.
So I'm going to show you States Exhibit 131. What are we looking at in the photo?
So this is that bullet that we just saw on the x-ray that I recovered from the left side of the chest. Again, lightly rinsed, placed in the Petri dish, photographed for documentary purposes, and then sealed and turned over to law enforcement.
So as part of your investigation, you talked, and actually the purpose, you said, of the autopsy was to determine cause and manner of death.
Yes.
What do you mean by cause?
So cause of death simply refers to the disease process, the injury, or in some cases the substance toxicity that accounts for why a person has died. It is a free text part of the death certificate, and I can literally write whatever I think is appropriate in a particular case.
And in this case, what did you determine regarding the cause of Patricia Swett's death?
I determined Ms. Swett's cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds.
And when you talk about manner of death, what are you referring to?
So again, as a medical examiner, I am tasked with offering my opinion on manner of death, which refers to the circumstances. That is not free text. I only have 5 choices, which are natural, suicide, accident, homicide, or undetermined.
And can you explain what homicide means in your context?
In my context, homicide refers to death that is due to injury caused by another individual with at least, well, I want to be careful here, a non-accidental injury from another person.
And what did you determine the manner of Patricia Swett's death to be?
Homicide.
So I want to ask you now about the autopsy that you performed on Matthew.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you Exhibit 60, which is the body diagram that we did for this particular case. And I'm actually going to go right to a version that shows the numbers a little better, so it's easier. So can you describe for us what you documented on your diagram?
Sure. So this is the same thing I was talking about in the previous case. It's just that, right, these are 2-dimensional diagrams, and I'm trying to account for a 3-dimensional human being. And in this particular case, 3 out of the 4 gunshot wounds are in locations that are kind of difficult to get onto a 2-dimensional diagram. But so there are 2 wounds to the right flank, one wound up basically at the junction of the right shoulder and the neck, and then one to the very upper back / base of neck region on the upper back.
And again, do these numbers reflect an order in which the wounds were inflicted?
No, I have, again, no particular ability to draw any educated opinion about order in which these gunshot wounds were sustained.
So before we turn to the gunshot wounds, I want to ask you about some other injuries that you documented on Matthew's body, and I'm going to show you States Exhibit 61, which is a photograph of his face. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is a photograph I took to document some of the abrasions, which is a type of blunt force injury. These are basically scrapes to Mr. Champagne's lower forehead and his nose.
And did you have any opinion about what might have caused those injuries?
I mean, individually, they're not exactly specific, but the presence of multiple of these injuries and the particular way that they look, they are certainly suggestive of some sort of terminal collapse that is unprotected. And what I mean is when most people fall, right, there's this natural instinct, you brace yourself with one of your upper extremities. But if you can't do that for whatever reason, we call that an unprotected fall. And when that happens, you tend to strike your body on relative prominences. So things like the forehead, the orbital ridges like above your eyebrows, or the bridge of your nose. And so this pattern does suggest that kind of unprotected fall by Mr. Champagne.
So I'm going to show you now State's Exhibit 60 again, which we're looking at, and I'm going to ask you about this wound first, number 1.
Okay.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 62, which is a photograph. And what are we looking at in the photo?
Okay. So, again, I'm going to refer to my autopsy report just to make sure I'm answering questions accurately and whatnot. So in this photograph, we're actually looking at Mr. Champagne. This is his right flank, and he's actually on his belly. So this is his right upper extremity that we're also seeing in the photograph. And so this is those two entry gunshot wounds to the right flank, number 1 being the one that's higher up or lower and to the right in the picture. And then number 2 is the one that's higher and to the left in the picture.
So just to be clear, wound number 1 is closer to the top of his body, closer to
Correct.
his bronchial area, and then wound 2 is the one on the left of the picture. That's
Correct, closer to his bum, yes.
And what direction was, for wound 1, what direction was the bullet traveling in?
So that wound path is right to left, a little bit or upward, and a little bit back to front.
And did the bullet that caused this injury, bullet number 1, did that exit the body?
No, it did not.
Where did it come to rest?
That one came to rest in the right side of the chest.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 64. What are we looking at in this picture?
This is one of the radiographs taken during Mr. Champagne's autopsy. It shows 2 of the 4 bullets that were ultimately recovered during the exam.
And does this show the resting place for bullet number 1?
It does, yes.
And is it on the right or the left?
It's on Mr. Champagne's right, so towards the left side of the photograph. I can circle it here to make sure the jury knows which one I'm talking
So
about.
is that the right one?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, is that the accurate? This is bullet number 1 that we're talking
Yes,
about?
that is the one I've been referring to for the last couple of minutes. Yes, ma'am.
So that shows its final resting place.
Correct.
How much damage was caused by this bullet?
I would describe this as a moderate degree of damage, I guess, in the relative scheme. There's injury to one of the ribs, the liver, and the right lung. So certainly a serious injury, absolutely potentially life-threatening, certainly without treatment, but not as immediately life-threatening as as the injuries I spoke to regarding Ms. Swett.
Is this an injury that could have been survivable in immediate medical treatment?
Potentially, yes.
Was bullet number 1 recovered?
Yes.
I'm showing you State's Exhibit 129. What are we looking at in that photo?
That is the bullet that we've been talking about. Again, recovered, cleaned a little bit, put in the container, photographed for documentation, and then sealed and turned over to law enforcement.
So I'm going to ask you now about wound number 2.
Okay.
Number 2. And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 62 again. I believe you talked about it a little bit before that, but do you see where the entry wound for 2 is in this?
I do, yes.
And where is it?
Again, so of the 2 defects in the right flank, now I'm talking about the one that is a little bit higher up and a little bit lower down on the patient's body, closer to his bum, which is the black box.
In what direction
Even though it's not disputed that Victor Rivera is the one who fired the shots in this case, the prosecution will likely be using the angle, the closeness, and the number of shots to enforce that he knew what he was doing and that he was in a murderous rage when he committed this crime. We'll see what happens, especially when the defendant takes the stand. Let's get to a break. We'll get you back in for more in the case in New Hampshire against Victor Rivera.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, Lori Vallow Daybell representing herself while facing conspiracy charges. We'll bring in experts as we unpack today's big hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
A Ponzi scheme and a deadly poisoning.
A former pharmacist already convicted in a federal fraud case.
Now stands trial for the murder of her husband.
The Ponzi scheme murder trial. Live coverage begins next week, only on Court TV.
I f***ed up without a doubt. I didn't mean to. The disrespect was too much. It was stupid. I was so furious. That's all. I'm waiting for cops.
Those were text messages sent by defendant Victor Rivera in the moments after he fatally shot his ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend. Prosecutors say that surveillance footage captured Rivera waiting for Patricia, Swett, and Matt Champagne in a parking lot before he followed them to their car and gunned them down. But despite the seemingly damning evidence, Rivera's defense attorney says to hold off any judgment until Rivera takes the stand to tell his side of the story, one in which he was gaslit and manipulated and in an overwhelmingly emotional state at the time. Let's get you back into the courtroom now, where we are hearing from the medical examiner who did the autopsies on the two victims in this case.
What direction was it?
So this bullet also went right to left, but this one went downward and a little bit forward. This bullet ends up in his pelvis.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 65 again. I'm sorry, not again. This is the first time I have this up for you, but what are we looking at?
So this is one of the other radiographs taken during Mr. Champagne's postmortem examination. And down in the pelvic region, there is a radiopaque object that is, to me, very clearly a bullet.
How much damage was caused by this bullet number 2?
This one, relatively lesser. It doesn't strike any major organs or any major blood vessels. It hits one of the ribs and the intestines and then soft tissues. So of all the gunshot wounds we're talking about today, this is the least injurious.
Is this one that you would expect to be survivable in isolation?
With treatment, probably yes.
And was bullet number 2 recovered as well?
Yes.
I'm going to show you things to the 69 and 70 together. What are we looking at?
Again, this is same thing we've talked about. It's the recovered bullet from the pelvis in the little container, photographic documentation, then sealed up and turned over to police.
Was this one of the more intact bullets that you were able to recover?
I think so, but to be honest, that's not something I'm really paying all that much attention to.
Do you do any examination of the bullets when you're collecting them, or do you just preserve them?
I mean, I look at them. I make some observations of whether the bullet is completely intact or whether it's deformed and fragmented and things like that. But I'm not a ballistics expert, so my exam is relatively limited.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 60 again, and I'd like to ask you now about wound 3.
Okay.
Wound 3. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 66, which is a photograph. Can you tell me what we're looking at in this photo?
So again, in this photograph, Mr. Champagne is on his belly, so face down, and there's actually 2 entry gunshot wounds that are visible. The one that was circled, or sorry, that number 3, is the one that is lower down in the photograph.
Is that accurate?
Yes, that's the one we're talking about now.
Okay. And what can you tell me about this wound?
So this wound, or this bullet ends up also causing injury very similar to wound number one, just basically in kind of the opposite direction. So again, there's a rib that's injured, as well as the liver and the right lung.
So in terms of directionality, so what direction was this traveling in?
So this one actually, and I guess this would be a point to reemphasize, everything I've said about directionality is with respect to that standard anatomic position that you see in these diagrams. That directionality assumes that the body is in that position at the time. And so when I say something is front to back, it's with respect to that anatomic position. So in this case, with respect to that anatomic position, the wound path is primarily downward, actually.
And if I understand you correctly, what you're saying, you can't conclude whether Mr. Champagne was upright or in a different position when this occurred, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So
Again,
when you say downward, you're not making a conclusion about how the bullet was fired?
no, I'm not. I'm simply stating the directionality that the bullet traveled within the body with respect to that standard anatomic position. This is convention for forensic pathologists in North America.
Where did this bullet 3 come to rest?
So this bullet actually ends up lodging in the right costal margin and actually was visible through the skin.
I'm going to show you now States Exhibit 67 and 66 together. Does this show what you're referring to in terms of where the bullet lodged?
Yes, the photograph on the right side shows that lodged bullet in the right lower chest region.
And you talked about the damage that this particular bullet caused. How significant is this again in terms of you expect this to be a survivable injury by itself?
This is essentially the same answer as when we talked about gunshot wound 1, because the same general structures are injured. It's a serious injury. It's certainly potentially life-threatening, but with access to relatively rapid medical and surgical care, potentially survivable, though.
And was bullet 3 recovered as well during your autopsy?
Yes.
I'm showing you States Exhibit 130. What are we looking at in this photo?
This is that bullet. So to distinguish the upper from the lower, the label on this one says bullet from right lower chest.
And I'm going to look at one more bullet wound that you talked about in your autopsy, and we're looking at number 4 now.
Okay.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 66, which we were just looking at again. Do you also see this wound in that photo?
Yes.
And where is it located?
Now I'm talking about the defect in the upper central back region, so it's the defect that's higher in the photograph within the red circle. Yes.
What direction was this bullet traveling?
So the wound path for this bullet was back to front or frontward, leftward, and downward, because this bullet ends up in the stomach.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 64. Does this show the resting place?
It does, yes.
And I'm going to, is this the place where it wound up?
Yes, that is radiographically showing where this bullet ends up, and from autopsy, I know that is actually within the stomach in this case.
How much damage was caused by this bullet?
This one was pretty serious. Certainly the most serious of his 4 individually. This one injures the left lung, the heart, the aorta, which is the largest artery in the body that exits out the heart and then ultimately goes on to supply pretty much the entire body, and then the stomach. So wounds involving the heart and the aorta are very, very serious. Again, we're talking very rapid blood loss, large volumes because you're under arterial pressure. So this is an injury that is rapidly going to be life-threatening.
So even in isolation, you would not expect this to be survivable?
Probably not. Again, maybe with very rapid access to medical and trauma kind of care, but probably not.
Were you able to recover bullet number 4?
Yes.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 71 and 72, and what are we looking at in those photos?
This is that bullet that I recovered. Like I said, it was actually within the lumen of the stomach. That just happens to be where it came to rest in this case. So again, recovered, photographed, sealed, etc.
So as part of your investigation, we talked about determining cause and manner of death for Patricia Swett. Did you also do so for Matthew Champion?
Yes.
What did you determine the cause of his death to be?
Also multiple gunshot wounds.
And what determination did you make regarding the manner of his death?
Homicide.
Can we have a moment? Nothing further. Dr. Weinberg, can you just ask some questions?
Sure.
Cross-examination of
And you heard it, the really most important part of what we get from a medical examiner who is on the stand, and that's when they talk about the cause and manner of death.